All right, hello, welcome back to another Sandbox tutorial. Today we're going to be covering some Razor UI. Specifically, we're going to be creating some vitals. We're going to create a health bar, which will update dynamically. We're going to create an inventory style hotbar, and then we'll also make a pause menu with a few clickable buttons. So this video should be more than enough to get you started. Hopefully you do already know at least some basic HTML and CSS. It would make your life a little bit easier as we go through this, but it is by no means necessary. I'm going to hopefully try to explain as much as I can as we go. All right, so let's just jump into it. This player here, as you can see up here, I have some health values, some armor values, a coin integer, and I have an inventory list. I can open up the code for that here. You can see just some floats, an int. I also have this time since variable, which will print as a nice little a timer. This is going to be our hotbar, so these are the weapons you'll be able to select between. This int of what our active slot is currently selected on, and this is what's in the inventory. So we're going to work with all these variables throughout this video. So the easiest way to get started here is right-clicking on the hierarchy, and you can just create a UI screen or world panel. And what the difference is if you create a screen panel, any UI components that we put underneath any UI components we put underneath the screen panel will be drawn over our screen. No matter what the size is, we'll resize it. It will draw to fit. But if you create a world panel, you'll see it's actually only going to render within the bounds of this box in world space. So you can rotate it around, and it's going to draw within these bounds at this resolution. So keep that in mind. Everything I'm showing you, I'm going to be doing in screen space, but you can apply the exact same methods to world space. So yeah, here I have this screen panel, and if you're used to Unity, you can kind of think of this as your canvas, and it has some functionality of a canvas group built right into it, so you can change the opacity of the panel, the z-index, all that stuff. So now I'm just going to create our first Razor panel, and I'm going to call this Player Vitals, Player Vital HUD. Maybe I'll just call it Player HUD, and I'll do a lot of the stuff in here. So when you go to create a new component, you're given the option to create a simple component or a Razor panel component. And we specifically want to create the Razor panel component. And for good practice, I like to put all my UI in the code UI folder. And you see here it's now .razor instead of .cs. So if we open this up in the IDE here, we can see it created a .razor file and a .razor.scss file. I'm going to drag the SCSS file off to the side because both of these go in tandem. This is the definition of our UI and what's in it. So we have a div panel within our root panel, and the div says my string value. But because it has an @ in front of it, that means we're actually just calling C# code. And because we're calling C# code, my string value is defined right here in our code block as a string. So it's actually just going to print the string within our div. You could also, to show that this is just running C#, you can see this does the exact same thing. So running this is just running C# code inside of our HTML, and that's all Razor is. That's all you really need to know about Razor. In our default template here, we're also given this override for build hash, and what build hash is when our UI is refreshed. So it's going to query these variables that we put in here, or the checks that you put in here. It's going to query against those, and if the value is different from the last time it queried, then it redraws your entire UI. So this means that the UI is only going to redraw or update when my string value is changed. So it's not going to bother redrawing the UI unless it's different. So if you made this time.now, which is a pretty bad idea, you shouldn't do this, it's now going to update every single frame. So let's start by just displaying some information from the player. I have these coins in this level. I have this little coin counter, and I have that time since, that time alive variable that I was talking about. I want to display both of these to the screen, and that's going to be our vital information. So I'm going to get rid of the default stuff that we have here. I'm going to leave this system.hashcode in here, but because I made my font real big, I'm just going to put this on its own line. My string value doesn't exist, so I'll just query against an empty quote for now. And so now this is some empty UI. If I hit play, you'll see I have this big gray rounded rectangle over everything. And you'll see in the CSS, that is because this default CSS, this default style that was added to our UI, is saying that the position is absolute, so that the top and left are not relative to whatever it may be inside of. We're just setting it directly. So the top left is zeroed out. We're setting it to the top left. The bottom right is also zeroed out. It's set to the bottom right. That means that our UI is going to fill the entirety of the screen. You can see here the background color is set. So if I come in here and I change this to a different color, it's instantly propagated to Sandbox. So I'm going to get rid of just about everything here except for the position absolute and our zeroing out of the corners, so that we have a UI that's filling everything. And right now you're not going to see anything other than the game. We're not going to see our UI just yet because we haven't added anything. So let's start by adding the vital information. So to create a new panel within this panel, we're just going to create a div. As easy as that. I'm going to call this our vitals. And in this div, we're going to display that information, the coins and time alive. Let's see. I want a reference to our player first. So let's get a property player controller player. And then we can say coins. Or surely there's like a money. Yeah, we get a money emoji in there. Whoops. Then we can just say @player.coins. Then what we're going to do is put the player.coins in our system.hashcode.combine in the build hash function so that our UI only updates when our coin count changes. So now if we launch, you'll see we get a bunch of errors and we have a coin in the top left with no number. And the reason why we have errors is because we're not actually referencing our player in the HUD. And now you'll see we have 0 coins in the top left. If I pick up a coin, it changes to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Excellent. But our problem here is that it doesn't look good. It doesn't look quite good at all. So let's style it. So we can see here on the left the UI, and we can see on the right the style. So I gave that div a class of vitals. And giving the div a class of vitals means that I can now reference it in the style sheet by putting dot for class and then the name of the class, vitals. Any style I put within this block is going to only apply to any div with the class vitals within our player HUD. So any is a little scary because that means even if we have here div class other stuff, and the other stuff might have some vitals, we might not want to target this div, but we do want to target this div for our styling. So to make sure we're only getting the one directly underneath our root, we can put a arrow. So now I'm going to do very similarly to what we have in this example here. I'm going to set the position manually. So position absolute because I'm setting it myself. And I'm going to set the bottom to 0. And I'm going to set the left to 0. And you'll see that now puts it in the bottom left. But that's a little too far down. I might actually want to bring that out 32 and 32. Okay, that's looking pretty good. It's worth noting, if you do know anything about CSS, that everything is display flex by default, and there's no alternative. Everything is always flex. And so the direction is always flex direction row. So because it is a row, we're going from left to right. That's why we have the coin and then our number here. And you can actually, if you have the UI panels view open here, we can go into our root panel and look at exactly how this is working. We have this vitals div with our P within it. The P is just like a paragraph tag, and it has two labels inside of it. The first is the emoji. The second is our coin count that updates dynamically. And so within this P tag, we want the coin and the text to be aligned. But it's worth noting that by default, if you do not specify a font family or font size, the text is actually not going to scale proper with the size of the window. So what I'm going to do is in the root of everything, I'm just going to set the font family to Poppins, which is just one of my favorite defaults. It's the core font of Sandbox. And then I'm going to set the font size to something maybe more reasonable, like 24. Yeah. And then in vitals, I'm going to override that and say maybe 64. We have a big coin count. Maybe now that I'm seeing this, we should put it in the top left. Have it in the top left there. That looks pretty good. We can also set the font weight to bold. And now we have this nice thicker number. If we actually open up the Sandbox wiki here, you can see they have a page for supported style properties. So if you're familiar with CSS, you can take a look here, see everything that you have at your disposal. There's probably a bit more than this by now. But if you're at all confused with what I'm doing in terms of CSS tags, where I'm finding them, how I know which I can and can't use, this is your master list. And then they have this page over here, which is their custom added classes. So I'm going to come in here actually, and there's a text stroke, size, color. This is a custom CSS property, and I'm going to throw this on our vital information. Probably want to make it like 8 pixels black, and then we'll make the color of our text white. Look at that. Now that is some good looking UI. Now let's show that timer underneath. We'll do player dot time alive. So we just need to make sure we add that value to our build hash, but you'll see it actually doesn't immediately work. And the reason for that is simply because this time alive is a time since class, and it can't really, it's like checking to see if the class has changed, but the class hasn't changed, the values within the class has changed, so we just gotta get it in a readable form. So now it's updating properly. But you'll see it's adding our time like to the end of the coins, and we want it to be underneath. The reason why that happens is because our vitals, as mentioned earlier with our display, if I open this back up, you'll see everything's in a row. So there's this first P, which is our coin and the score, our coin count. And then this, which is the timer. It's placed in a row. We want to make it a column. So if I go to our vitals, we can say flex direction column, and now it'll be one on top of the other. And I'm going to go ahead here and create a nice little function. And this is what I'm going to put in the player time alive, in place of the player.time alive. So we have this nice little timer that updates every second instead of every single frame. And it's a lot more readable on the screen. I guess to keep up with this, I should put like a clock. Yeah, some sort of like timer emoji. There we go. Look at that. Looks great. Fantastic. We got some good looking UI going. All right, now, as you might have noticed, I have these two colored blocks that I've to test the health values. So here is the player's health. I have 100 health to start, 100 max health. When they touch the red, they take 10 damage. And when they touch the green, they heal 10. So I want to display a health bar. I'll put that in the bottom left. I'm going to create another div called Healthbars. Oops. And I want to create a health bar div within that. And think about the way that this is going to work real quick, right? So we have a health bar, which is this red box. And then within the box, it fills up yay much. And then all of this is filled in, right? So that, if you're looking at it, requires 1, 2 divs. But if you want it to look a little bit, or have a little more options with your styling, I guess to say, and give it some padding. So you have, I guess I'll use rectangle tool again. Have another rect within this so that this is all black. And then within here, this is filled in. If you want to do something like this, you need 3 divs. So that's your 1, 2, 3. So you got to think about it. It's good to draw out your UIs before you actually go guns ablazing with them. It really helps for a moment like this. So we have our health bar, which is the outermost, and then we have our inner, which is going to contain the fill. Whoops. Just going to contain our fill class. And you see our Copilot is giving the answer away immediately, but it's really simple as adding a style property to the div that simply directly sets it in code. So if you think about this, we probably actually want this to be player health divided by player dot max health times 100f, and then so this quite literally just gets our health value, divides it by our max health value. So if we're at 100 out of 100, that's 1. If we're at 50 out of 100, that's 0.5. If we're at 0, it's 0. Then we multiply that by 100 to get a number from 0 to 100, and it just inserts that as a string, puts it as the percent. This is one way to do it. I'll show the other way you can do it in just a second. This will immediately work, which is what I would have said if it was styled at all. You'll see nothing is visible. Nothing's. How do we know it's there? We have to style it. So underneath our vitals, I'm going to create a health bars style. Is that what I called it? Yep, health bars. And then I want health bar, inner, and the fill. So I'm just going to quickly set that up. And we'll start instantly seeing some results in just a second. I'm going to, do the position absolute in the bottom left. And I'm going to make the health bars have a width of 300 pixels, height of 64 pixels, set the background color to black, and we'll immediately see our health bar. I'll set this to maybe 400 or 500. And it's worth noting that these PX values that I've been using for the font size and now for the width and height of this health bar, that is scaled to, imagine your UI is 1920 by 1080, and then it is scaled up or down to whatever resolution. So right now I'm at a 1138 by 595, just because that's the size of this little window here, and you can see that changes. So if I actually measured this right here, this is actually 275 by 37 because it's scaled down from the 1080p scale. So if you're on 4K, it would scale up accordingly. I'm actually going to make this a slightly dark gray just because that's the vibe that I like. So the inner here is what I'm actually going to give the background color of black, the pure black. And you'll see it instantly is like filled up. I'm going to make sure it stays filled up by giving it flex grow, so it'll grow to fit the space. Then if I add, I think, a padding of 8 pixels to the health bar, now we get that little outline effect I was talking about. You see a lot better like this. Boom. And then our fill, we want to give it exactly like this. The height of 100, background color of red. because it's a red health bar. And we don't need to set the width here because the width is being set in code. And you'll see if I start taking some damage, the values are updating. But it only updates when our timer updates because, once again, as always, we need to go back and add our player.health to our build hash. And now, when we take the damage, it is instantly updating on our UI. The alternative method to setting the width of the style is I'm just going to copy this health bar, and I'm going to call this health bar armor. So it has the class health bar and an additional class of armor. And you'll see why I did that in a sec. And I'm going to get rid of this code right here, this style that I'm manually setting. And instead, I'm going to get a reference to the panel. And this is going to be done with an @ref equals armor fill. It's going to give me an armor, or it's going to give me an armor. It's going to give me an error saying there is no armor fill. So I'm going to say panel armor fill. And now errors are going away. And I have it as a reference. And now what I can do is in our protected override void on update, we can set the style width directly. I think we want length.percent. Yeah, and then here we can get armor divided by the max armor. Change the value here, and it's changing just as the health would. So there's two different ways you can do it. One of those methods is through setting it in C#. The other is setting it through Razor. And now I'm just going to come back here and set this flex direction a column, and then give it a gap of about 8 pixels. So there's a little bit of distance between the two. And then I'm going to come down to the bottom of our health bar and say and armor, so that if it's a health bar and it has the armor class as well, then we'll make the fill blue. I'm going to do a nice little lighter blue. And then I'm also going to make the height smaller. So there you go. Two different styles of health bar there. And if you wanted to do a vertical health bar, you could apply the exact same knowledge, but with a height or otherwise. And if you wanted to start from the right or start from the bottom, then you want to take a look at your flex align, your line items. A little homework for you to try for yourself. See if you can make a health bar start from the other side. Your hint is flex end. Then just for fun, we're going to add the value itself. Add a little heart. Player.health P. This is exactly what I was looking for. Setting it to the top left. But you'll see if you just set something to the top left, it's the anchor is in the top left. So you have to then translate it or set its origin. And then I'll do font weight bold. That looks pretty okay. All right, I'm sure this video's already been going on for a decent amount of time, so let's go ahead and make it even longer. Add a hotbar. I'm just going to put it on the bottom. You'll be able to scroll wheel to go through it. You'll see I already have the code for that set up right here. Just active slot plus equals input mouse wheel, and it's modulo slot count. We've got 9 slots. So if I come down here, add another div, class is going to be hotbar, and then I'm just going to do a for int I0, I is less than player.slots I++, and then I'll do div class slot. And then what we can do here, we'll add .hotbar. So we have the hotbar. So I'm going to give the hotbar position absolute, bottom 32 pixels, width, make it 100%. I'll now add our slot, which should be something like this. Background color, just make them pink for now. I like using pink just because it stands out immediately. You're like, okay. Give them a little bit of a gap between each other. This should probably be a bit bigger than that. Okay, maybe not that big. There you go. It should be justify content center, though. So there we go. That hotbar perfectly fits. You do got to keep in mind, though, that, you know, if you are resizing UI like this, then that can quickly become a problem. So another way you could do it, if you're considering this option, is splitting this up into, you have one big div at the bottom, and it's in flex row. So first you have your Healthbars div, which is flex shrink 0, so it can't be shrunk. And then your hotbar fits within here with flex grow 1. But I'm not going to do that for the sake of this video, just because it looks fine at the resolution I'm using. So we're going to keep pressing on. I'm just making sure that you guys are all aware of these things. Nice little dark effect. Border radius, maybe like 16 pixels. Looking good. Nice little rounded edges. But now I want to show the one that is currently selected. We already have this for loop that has the index of the current slot. So we can just add to our class if player.active slot is equal to I, then we'll set it to active. Otherwise, you won't add an additional class. So this is just going to resolve to either active or no string. And then I'll go back here and I'll say, and if it's active, we'll just give it a brighter background color. Oh, so my problem now is, once again, who could guess it? We need to make sure that our player.active slot is added to the build hash. So now it updates live. So now I can scroll through and it's updating instantly. And now I want to add some like animations to this. I want it to kind of be like the half-life effect, where it kind of grows in size with the slot you have selected. So I can make it so the active one is also bigger. You'll see now it grows in size, but it's not animating. So I can add a transition. I'll just transition all 0.2s, and I'll do a little ease. I want to make sure that that's in the slot itself, so that it transitions on the way out as well. And look at that. Now it's kind of bouncing around because the current align items is set to flex start, and we want it to be flex end, so everything is aligned to the bottom. And do that in the hotbar. Align items, flex end. And now look at that. We have this beautiful hotbar. There's this nice little animation when you scroll. The only thing it's missing is displaying what's inside of your inventory. So we'll say if I is less than the item count. That's exactly what we want. And I'll just, I don't have any of that other information, so I'll just display player.items I. And you'll see now we have that weapon underscore pistol in our first slot. And can scroll over to it, and everything's hunky-dory. So the last thing I want to do before I end this video is a quick pause menu. So you can press escape, opens up a little menu, freezes your cursor, pauses the game, freezes time, has a few buttons you can click just to show some mouse interactivity and all that. So let's jump into that. What I'm going to do for this is I'm actually going to make that a separate screen panel. So what I'm going to do is create an object, and this is going to be all just UI, I'll just call it. And then I'll put this screen under the UI, and this will be main HUD. And then I'm going to make another screen, and it's going to have a lower Z index, and then I'm going to create our pause menu. And this is also going to be Razor component. Put it in our UI folder just because that's some good practice. And it's a .razor file. Should open up immediately for us. And if I launch the game, we'll see it's in front. If I put the Z index higher than 100, because 100 is the Z index of this one, the pause menu would be below everything. So we want it to be above everything. So we leave it at about 50. So I'm just going to play with this default here. Really all I'm going to do is have a div with some options. And these options are going to have some buttons. We'll just have it resume. And then we'll say there's another button that quit. Resume and quit. Seems pretty easy. I won't have the quit actually quit. I'll have it just like print something or do something. I don't know what it'll... I'll make it make a sound. We'll do a sound. I'll show you a little UI sound. How about that? Play sound. I'm going to create a public bool is paused. And then I'll make protected override void on update. And I will just say if input.escape pressed, we toggle the pause. Instead of this, because this is actually only going to return the contents or prevent the returning of the contents, it's still going to create the root itself. Probably better if we just throw a class on the root that is, if you're paused, then hide. Otherwise, we don't add a class. And then what I can do is come in here and we can add opacity 0 to our hide. So now hitting escape is going to toggle our pause menu. Great. But it currently doesn't free the mouse. So let's make it so pointer events are set to all. So all of our pointer events, or so all objects take pointer events. You could just do this on the buttons and it'll still give access to the mouse, but doing it on this panel itself will just make sure that as long as it's visible, your mouse is visible. Kind of like just being able to like barely see through your pause menu, something like that. I also should probably add like a header at the top that just says paused. All right, you can see everything's stuck up in the top left, so let's make it all look good. Give it color white, a default font family, so we can have it scale properly. That seems pretty good to me. For that header, we'll make it so the font size is something like big. What is it? Bolder. Yeah, there we go. And we have paused in this big, thick text. We're going to justify content center. We're going to align the items to the center. And then change the flex direction of column so it goes paused and then the options. And then in our options, we are going to do the same thing. Make a column and then align items in the center so it looks nice. And now we have a decent looking pause menu, but it doesn't actually pause our game. You'll see. So we can quickly come in and say our scene dot time scale. If it's paused, it's 0. Otherwise, it's 1. And now you'll see. Oh, I got it backwards. And by I mean Copilot. Copilot, you're really throwing for me. Oh, I have this backwards. This should be, yeah, that's my bad. Someone was probably screaming at the screen when I did that. There we go. So now, when the game is paused, time scale goes to 0. Everything just works. All right. So now let's make these buttons clickable. If we just add an on click, we can just have it reference a C# function. So this is on resume. This is on click on play sound. And then I can just add on resume and on play sound. Get no errors. We'll just say is paused equals false. So we click that now, and it resumes the game. And I'm actually not going to do anything in terms of on-click for the play sound. I'm going to show you how to do it directly through CSS. Earlier, there's this sound in and sound out. Our options. Let's make this button S effects. We'll say if our button has the S effects class, then when it's active, so this colon is different states we're checking for. So we're checking if it's active. You can also check if it's in an intro state, meaning it just was created. Outro state, meaning it was just leaving. So if it's active, we can say sound in. Let's get a sound. UI dot. Yeah, let's play UI downvote. It's a funny sound. UI dot downvote. Beautiful. Now we click on the play sound, and it's playing that sound entirely through CSS. So that means we can actually, with any of our buttons, we can just say, if it's in the hover state, sound in UI.button.over, active sound in UI button, I think it's press. Yeah, and get some nice little sounds for hovering over them. And we get a sound when we click on them. So yeah, that's very, very epic. Hopefully that covers the most of what needs to be done. I can make these buttons look more like buttons, like we can get... Could also make it scale the button up when you hover, and then you add a transition on all of it. And it looks great. We can also come into here and transition our opacity as like a little 1 second ease. So pausing the game, that was this like slow little animation. Yeah, tons and tons of stuff that you can do with Razor. Razor is just very, very powerful. There's a lot you can do with it. And if you want to split your menu up into different parts, like for example, if I want to say my health bars are their own panel, let me show you how to do that really quickly. So we'll make a healthbars.razor, and we'll say using sandbox, using sandbox.ui, and we'll just paste this guy right in here. Actually don't need this, just need these guys. Make this class Healthbars just like it was, and then in our code we'll have public player controller player, because we need a reference to the player, and then we'll come back here and we'll just replace this with health bars, and we'll set player to player. We'll pass that player reference directly as a property, and then these guys, this player.health, can make its way over. We also need using system here for it to stop yelling at me about that. And then I need to come in here and grab that armor fill panel reference, because we did it differently. But it's worth noting that this .razor file does not extend or inherit panel component. It inherits panel, and panel does not have an on update. At least right now. It could change. The terminology could change. The API is still a little wonky in terms of UI ever since the scene changes. So this is actually public override void tick. When you are in a panel, you want a public override tick for each frame. And then when you're in a panel component, you want to protected override void on update. So now we should see the identical functionality here if I restart it. But now our health bars are in their own razor file. And we could then create a .scss file to accompany it and give it the attribute style sheet. So it loads that SCSS file instead of it styling it in our player HUD. So we could reuse it anywhere. Hopefully that covers everything. This recording has been going on for far too long now, and I know I'm going to be cutting a lot of it, but hopefully it was informative. Hopefully this helps at all. Yeah. Also, I hope you like VTuber Terry. He was fun to make. He was fun to set up, and he actually uses my webcam. All right, everyone. I will see you guys in the next tutorial if I do one. Mwah.